Hello, this is Black Country Blokes chewing the fat.
Listen.
I've been hearing a lot lately about men don't talk, but in my experience, men do talk, just people aren't listening. So it's going to be me and a group of blokes discussing our struggles and victories through life. Warning, there may be some bad language, so apologies to all the moms, especially my own. Let's get going.
Listen.
Yeah, this is the Black Country Blokes chewing the fat with me, Kev Dillon, Lee Cadman, and tonight we're joined by Pat Lewis. Now, we've had some technical difficulties, so please join us. You've only missed 6 minutes of his interview. It's all about Hillsborough. And if anyone would like to donate a computer, that's the thing that's let us down today, just to help our cause. Take care of yourselves.
On for a good 5 minutes, and I distinctly remember thinking, I'm going to die here.
5 minutes is a long time when you're frightened, isn't it?
Yeah, it was bad, and I remember it's stuck with me since. I mean, I'm 46 now. I was 15 then, and if I get into a lift that's full now, I remember that crush. If I get into a room that's full, I panic. You know, you panic because the feeling of being crushed is just awful. And then I said to Lee, the deciding factor was why I think I'm still here now. And that's outside the ground, so I can imagine what it was like in the pens. There was a massive guy, and he put himself between me and my brother and my dad, and he was literally holding some of the crowd off us because you couldn't stand, you couldn't feel the ground, you were just being moved in this crowd. And then I just remember being lifted up. I remember there was 5 minutes isn't a long time, but when you're in there, it feels like an eternity. Because you are thinking that we're gonna, and I remember looking at my dad thinking, "What are you going to do about this then?" And when you're that young, your dad's a bit of a sort of role model to you.
With the superheroes, aren't they, in your mind?
And when you look at him and he's got no ideas what to do because there is none, because you couldn't get out, and you couldn't walk out, and you couldn't go there. The only option was up. And I distinctly remember, I think it must have been the policeman. He said, get all the kids over the turnstile, carry them over the turnstile by way of the crowd. So up I went, revealing my Manchester United top at the time, which was obviously wasn't too bothered about at the time because I was so relieved to get out of there. And up I went over. I remember being terrified because I remember thinking, my brother's still in there. My brother's a lot taller than me. My brother's 6 foot odd, but he's I remember thinking my brother and my dad are still in there. And then I went into the Leppings Lane end. And like I was saying to Lee and you before, I recall running down the tunnel towards the pens and a policeman stopping me. And I came back and I must have instinctively thought, I'm not happy with this. And then they opened the gates on the Leppings Lane end. And it was like, I can only describe it as opening a floodgate on a weir. Thousands upon thousands of fans going to an already overcrowded pen. The other issue was that North Stand was to my left when I went in. Leppings Lane, when you go visit it, it's a tiny tunnel. It's a really small tunnel that you run down to go into those pens. It's unbelievable. I remember must have been fans from North Stand who would run down into those pens and that's why they become so overcrowded, because you didn't readily know that was North Stand, and North Stand was tickets only, and it was seats. So, and Leppings Lane was obviously standing in the pen. So there must have been fans that should have been in North End, that didn't go into North End, like I did. I made that mistake, but came out just before there was a surge. Then sometime later, I saw my dad, and my dad came through the turnstiles as normal, and my brother. And obviously you think then, this is a normal thing at football. This has just happened. It's fine now. It's over. Of course it wasn't. And went into the North Stand. And what was believed to be football violence. I remember seeing Forest fans gesturing towards Liverpool fans who were coming onto the pitch, and it was just chaos. I mean, it was just absolute chaos. There was police officers obviously there trying to assist. You didn't know for a long time what was going on until that pitch was half full of Liverpool fans and people obviously quite clearly unconscious and lying down. And you could obviously see the police respirate people, or trying to respirate people. and even the Notts Forest fans thought it was a pitch invasion to attack them because they started coming over as well, if I remember. Or they started running towards at least the cage in front of them, as if to gesture the Liverpool fans on. And you could quite clearly see Liverpool fans trying to tell the authorities that it wasn't a pitch invasion. It was there was a major issue in those pens, that they were full.
And like we're here today to tell Pat's story. We're not here to get at any fans or at the police. This is just his experience of what he saw at that time and then the effects that it's given to him. Sorry, Pat, carry on.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just say, we have had slight audio issues. We apologise for that. We think it was Craig. So if I was looking down at my phone, that was why, Pat. It wasn't disrespecting. I was trying to sort that out. But it is all cleared up now, so we're good to go. Yeah,
and then it became quite clear what happened. But as I said before, you're in a stand where some of the fans thought that this was a hooligan pitch invasion, and other fans were realising that it wasn't. There was obviously some medical needs going on, and something very, very bad was unfolding. And people were fighting in our stand, and that was probably, for a 15-year-old lad, that's probably one of the most scary. Other than what happened before, that was as scary because people were starting to fall into disorder within the stand. And these were quite clearly decent people, you know what I mean, who just lost their way because they were frightened, they didn't know what was going on. They were obviously angry at the authorities, maybe, because there was no ambulances coming on. So you could feel the sheer anger and temper in the people that were around you. And bear in mind, when something like this happens on that day, I mean, the authorities were probably ill prepared to deal with it now, but I mean, then they were even more so. So, and then obviously what you see on the footage is the ambulances coming on. It was pretty obvious what had happened, and you saw bodies of people. To be honest,
and I bet that's been so traumatic, especially as a child. And at 15, you think you're grown up, but you're a child.
Yeah,
seeing that fear in your dad's eye as a superhero, and these other grown-ups, and then being rescued, but not you've been rescued, but you're on your own and not knowing what do I do now? I've been rescued, and then seeing the chaos of the bodies. I mean, God, it must have been horrific.
Yeah, it was, and then I think you just feel cold, don't you? Because you shouldn't go to a football match and that happen, really, should you?
You were saying earlier too, wasn't it, Pat? You're quite at that age. You were quite experienced with things happening at football matches as well, wouldn't you? So it wasn't. It took a lot at that point to scare you because you'd seen a lot within. Yeah, I mean, I went to a lot of football. I mean, I was saying to Lee, we used to go to Old Trafford a lot. Me and my dad, and it was just generally me and my dad at that time. We used to go together, and you'd go at Summit, Busby Way as it was then, which was a long road. Thousands of Manchester United fans trying to get into their stands, and it wasn't unknown to get kicked by a horse. They used to throw the horses down there. To get a baton, the odd baton strike, you get an odd baton strike as well, or you could quite get into a crush because there's that many fans trying to get into the ground at one time. So you weren't naive. It wasn't naive. You weren't. I wasn't naive to crushes and sort of body movement, and sort of serious things like that. But that crush outside was. I mean, I've never forgotten that, and I can still feel it now today.
Should we show that clip now?
Yeah, let's get on. Hopefully all this works for us.
I mean, how does that make you feel, Pat, looking back? Because you were that little lad in the Man United top who was getting carried at the top.
I find it quite hard to watch, to be honest, the other day. But it's I do remember it, and I've seen that footage many, many times now because it was at the inquest and everything. I mean, I was just so thankful to be out there, to be honest. So,
because like you're saying, like by chance you were strolling through YouTube or something, and you hadn't forebed in years, and then that popped up, and it brought it all coming back to you, didn't it? Like trauma.
Well, I started in when I probably about 46 now. Probably about 10 years ago, I started dreaming. It was really weird. I started dreaming Hillsborough again. I started getting that sound, you know, that crowd, you can hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
They're swearing and saying the word slang and things like that. I started hearing that again, and when I went to bed at night, I would relive Hillsborough again, and that came out of the blue for me. I don't know where that came from. I think it was because I saw a piece of footage, and I don't know who he was with at the time, but I said, that's me, that's definitely me there. And everything started coming back to the point where I ended up having counselling about it. So,
because like back then in the late 80s, there wasn't the counselling, wasn't there? Wasn't like, oh, you've just seen so and so been crushed, you haven't lost, just, you know, counselling wasn't acceptable as it is today, is it?
No.
I mean, post-traumatic stress, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'm better now. I don't really like to. I mean, it was hard doing this to when we went through that footage and we together, and it was hard watching that footage. I was starting to get palpitations again. You know, like not a panic attack, but your chest gets a bit tight. Then you're starting to feel that nervous feeling, and I felt that today. I just felt that now again. So it's one of those. I say I'm better now. I mean, I went through. I still can't get into lifts, full lifts. I'll avoid them like the plague. I'm still wary of that feeling of being crushed, that feeling of not being able to get out, and not being in control of, where you are in the situation you're in. So I think I'll get that probably for the rest of my life. But I'm here today, and that's the main thing. And luckily, I didn't go into that pen because if it was that bad outside as it was, I can imagine what it was like in there.
On that scary footage, I say we went through and looked at some footage earlier, and it gets worse from that point, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That really is the start of it, isn't it? That what we've just seen of you being carried over, and it doesn't. In actual minutes, it doesn't last that much long after that.
No,
but it just gets so much worse so quick.
Yeah, and I think people should ask themselves the question of whether you could stop that from happening, because it happened so quickly. When you've got to make a decision, it's not always decisions aren't. It's great in hindsight to make a decision, but when you've got to make that decision, I'm still sort of for me it was the right decision because I'd been carried out, and but for my family it was the right decision to open that gate because it saved my family. But you then wonder whether that has an adverse effect on the pens, and that's what So that's what hangs heavy in my head really a little bit.
But I bet when you've lost your dad, you've lost your brother, and then I bet the relief of thinking, thank God Dad's here. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because as you say, you've been carried away, and they've saved you, but then it's like, what do I do with myself now? Yeah. You know what I mean? I bet that was such a part conflict of emotions, and then to see him again, thinking, thank God you am still alive. We are all leaving here. But
then you go into a stand where people are fighting and there's no control in that stand at all. And you're thinking, because I had quite a nice background anyway. I came from a really bad background before, but I had a really nice background growing up, which obviously you remember more than when you started life. So I was never exposed to sort of, I'd seen football violence quite often at matches and seen it since. But I was never exposed to that sort of when you've got no control around you. There's no security around you, so anything goes at that minute, and you're in that stand, and things are going on in that stand. It's going on the pitch, it's going in the pens. It's a feeling I'd never had before, and an experience I'd never had before of not knowing what was going to happen next. So, it destroyed my brother emotionally. Yeah. He never got over Hillsborough, I don't think.
Is he your older brother?
Yeah, my older brother. He's a doctor now, a surgeon, but he was bad for a long time afterwards, emotionally broken, and very tearful. And funny enough, it's not funny, but we had a lad from Africa who'd come over to do, when you used to have the overseas stays at schools.
Yeah, foreign exchange.
So he's normally, I think he was French, African, so he'd come from France. He'd turn around to me, and we got home, and I can't remember one word being said in that car on the way home. Because obviously everything's coming in. My dad's probably got the radio on. He's listening to that, if I could recall it. But I don't remember one word that was said in that car. Which is unusual because normally you dissect the game afterwards. If we went to Old Trafford, saw the United play or something. And
especially a big game like that, it was a big occasion, wasn't it?
The FA Cup, the semi-final. Semi-final FA Cup, I should say. But when we got back, he turned to me, this French lad, I can't remember, some more, I think his name was. And he said, does that happen at every game you go to? I was like, no.
But he had nothing else to reference it to.
Yeah, exactly. And God knows what he thinks now. I mean, he's going to be he was probably my age, so God knows what he must have thought when he got home to France. Said, I've just been Hillsborough disaster, the biggest disaster in football history. And we don't really discuss it. If I've spoken to my brother, I've probably spoken to him about it once. He won't discuss it.
Because how many lives were lost?
96.
96 lives.
So I go back to school on the Monday. And obviously you say to your people, I was there. And they're like, yeah, of course you were. I said, no, I was there. I was one or two lads from my school who went to that match, and I came back and he didn't because he died. So.
And do you remember his name?
John O'Brien.
John O'Brien. Like, at the end of this, have we got that clip?
Yes, mate, for a minute.
Our respects to those poor people who went there to watch a game of football and didn't come home.
So yeah, that's 96 people just out for a game of football and didn't return.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know your lovely wife, Kim. See, Kim, I have mentioned you. And we're like, the love of a partner and then being a daddy, that can, she's helped you no end, hasn't she?
Yeah, she's been very supportive because she could see. The problem was for me is when it came back later, I found that a bit strange that I was fine and then it came back. And it must be something that just starts off those memories again. Of course, I mean, I was a dad then as well. So, when you've got kids, you're thinking, well, what would I be thinking if I was there with my kids? And that was why I must have come back. And obviously, I went through a real bit. I went through a troubled time. I was trying to come to terms with it as an adult, where I coped with it quite well as a kid, but as an adult, couldn't cope with it very well. And then you had to sit through the whole inquest again. And then the subsequent, decisions on the court, case and things like that. So it was everywhere, Hillsborough, for a long time, wasn't it? And all the inquests and everything. And then they have another inquest again because the first one was decided to be wrong. So, I just grab, really, what I take from it is just take every day as it comes, make the most of life, because you don't know when you're going to go to something like that and it's going to end, do you?
And I think what you said, like, when you become a dad,
yeah,
what we can deal with as a kid, like when you become a dad, you start seeing the world different. Like when you're a kid, you love roller coasters, and then when you become a dad, you think, well, hang on, that might kill me. And I think, like, on a smaller scale, but like then having your children, thinking, well, maybe I took Josh to the Wolves and he loves the Wolves, and if I took Jasmine and what's your eldest? Sorry, Amelia,
yeah.
And you start taking them out, you take them to a pop concert. And it happens then, and I imagine all those emotions come back, like your dad, a special day out for you and your bro.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, and you experience that. You sort of. I mean, I've taken Josh to the Wolves a couple of times. I mean, that killed football for me. I mean, I was so fanatical about football. I mean, I don't think there was a moment in the day I didn't think about football. My room was caked in Man United shirts. I had every shirt of that era. I didn't miss. I had programs everywhere. I mean, I still got the Hillsborough. I've still got both programs from 1988 and 1989. But I don't think I looked at football the same after that day. I think that killed it for me. I thought I didn't have that. I lost a bit of that hunger for the game, and part of me died that day. I mean, I've never had any allegiance to Liverpool Football Club whatsoever, other than just admiring the way they play. And obviously now. But being a Manchester United fan, it's innate in you to almost not like them, I suppose, in many ways. But the only link I'll ever have with that club, will be Hillsborough. So, and I imagine there's probably many of people like me who went there as probably independents and have had that link with that club ever since. And
it's not that you're going out for Liverpool; it's just that as traumatised for the event, isn't it? And it's because what's happened. And I think that if that had been you've gone to see a boxing match or anything, it's that traumatic thing which was supposed to be such a happy occasion. Yeah.
I mean, just this family. I mean, because when we went on the Monday to school and his mum was on the stage, obviously, I mean, her son had been dead for 2 days, so it was obviously quite bad to watch her because she was obviously extremely distraught. And I don't think it hit home for a long time what I'd been involved in or what I'd experienced on that day. But later in my 30s, when I started reliving it, it was crystal clear that day. It came flooding back from that walk in the sun, being hot, cold, to seeing Liverpool fans enjoy themselves, and then what transpired and happened. That came back vividly. That did. Well, I mean, you're never going to forget anything like that, are you? So
I think a lot of time you don't get the magnitude of it until days later, either, do you? Or years later, you don't really get what you were involved in.
But like almost 20 years on, and then it just goes, boom, the lights come back on, kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a surreal thing, really, because I'd had other experiences at that time. I'd done other experiences, which obviously I won't go into, but I'd had experiences which were never as bad as that. I mean, that tops them all, Hillsborough. But I thought I'd got over. I thought I'd grown into a man and been a dad, and then it came back, and obviously you start having sort of, your sort of anger phase comes back and all this, and you start reliving it at night, and you can't sleep, and that obviously causes initial problems because you're then tired all the time, and then sort of you have to seek help. Then you have to go and find someone who you can talk to. Who will understand what you've gone through. I mean, I haven't lost any members of my family, but I saw it all. That
could have easily been you, your dad, your brother, and it was your school colleague, and
I mean, I went down that tunnel and I went down into that pen and I came back again. For I don't know why. It might have been the police officer shouting. I think he said something like, "Where's your dad?" or something. I think that's what he said. It'll stop there or something. But I quite, for many years after that, I thought, my stuff came from what happened outside, which was really, really bad, that crush. But the thought that I was actually in that pen initially and then came out, I mean, that's a weird thought in itself, really.
So if you'd have stayed there, it'd have happened. Because
it was quite some time between me coming out of that pen, standing by the wall, watching these fans fly down there, singing. Excitedly singing. It wasn't like, it was excitement, sheer excitement, adrenaline, because they were going into the stands to watch Liverpool play. The issue was you could hear the match being played. That was the issue. So that made it more exciting for them because they could hear that they were missing the match.
I'll be first. Get close as I can to see them play.
And that caused you then to rush, doesn't it? Because if you've been a football fan or a boxing fan like I am now, and you miss the start of a match, you're desperate to get it on, aren't you?
Yeah.
And once it's on, you relax. And I'm here now, it's on. So, I'm very lucky, and there's not a day it doesn't go back. I don't sort of count, I don't realise how lucky I am in many ways.
I think you mentioned again off air that you had basically a guardian angel there with you, didn't you, when it was going on?
So there's this bloke, and he's a huge bloke. I mean, I remember him. I can't remember his face. I remember he had black hair, and I remember he was massive, and he was a big bloke. And my dad's only small, and he was literally holding the crowd off me because you could see I was going under. And how I didn't go under, I don't know. Because once you're under there, that's it. It's over because you're under the crowd then. And he was holding me up, keeping the crowd off me until they lifted me over. So big thanks to him, really.
As you say, once you're under the water, you stay under it, don't you?
Yeah, once you go into those feet, I don't think you're coming up from there. Yeah. Which is obviously what was happening in those pens. They were going under, being dragged under, and then once you're under, you're being stamped to death, aren't you?
And they're petrifying, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can't imagine, can you? You just can't.
No.
And have you it's affected you in other things in life, apart from the lift, does it? Have you had to live? Obviously, did you find it affected you in the younger things, like with, going to a nightclub or going to a football match or a boxing match or whatever? Yeah,
I don't like crowds. I get anxious about going places where there's lots of people. I don't like going places where there's lots of people. I remember going to a bonfire night at Himley Hall, and there was, if not hundreds, there was thousands of people there. I
think we've all been there at one point at Himley, and I don't enjoy that, to be honest.
And I was literally saying to my wife, bless her, I was saying, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here with this. It's that panic you get, because I felt the panic. I thought, this is it. I'm dead. You feel that panicking feeling. That's the worst feeling, is where you think, I can't get out of this. I'm not going to get out of this. This is it. And so if it hadn't been for that bloke, I think I probably would have died on outside that ground. So, which is obviously a weird thing to say, but I truly believe I would have, because my dad wouldn't have been able to do anything. And there was that many people behind us pushing, and you wouldn't. I was such a small kid. I'm a small bloke now, but I was tiny as a kid. I just wouldn't have survived that. But yeah, any sort of, to answer your question, Kev, any sort of where there's lots of crowds. I mean, football now. You go to a football match and you've got loads of space. The seats are, nicely positioned. You can walk through the walkways and go out and go to the loo and do whatever you got to do, and there's no crush or. So it's different football now. It was very much. It was different then.
Because you were explaining this to me, because I don't know nothing about football. Yeah. But you had the seating area over there, and yours was all just standing area, wasn't it?
No, it was in the north stand.
Where the crush happened.
Right, so the crush in the 80s, the crush was in the pens.
Yeah.
So you had a fence that went over, so you shouldn't be able to get over the fence because they were worried about crowd violence, weren't they? What happened was as those pens filled up, the fans came in. I'm not an expert. I'm just talking of what I can.
What you can remember.
Recall.
That's all we want.
And they filled the gap that should be. There should be a gap so you can move backwards if need be. And obviously those fans were being crushed against the fence.
Yeah.
And there was a pen that was empty, but they couldn't open the door. I don't think, or they couldn't get in there to relieve. They always had they should have had, or they did have, an empty pen to relieve that happening, but for some reason they couldn't get into that pen. So they were maintained, I'm thinking 3 pens, without seeing the footage, I don't know, I can't recall. Yeah. But I'm thinking that it happened in the three pens, and there was 4 pens. So you had an overflow pen as well. But it would have happened so quick. I mean, for me, going over the turnstile, standing there waiting for my dad, I'm talking about seconds before that door opened. And I can distinctly remember them opening that gate, and everyone came through that gate and down that tunnel.
There's nowhere for them to go, was there?
No. As I say, I always describe it as a weird. When you open the door and and the pressure is like that.
Tsunami.
It reminds me of that. Yeah, it's going through that hole one way or the other, and that's what happened. And they went down there, and 96 of them died. So, and just thank God I didn't go down there. Well, I did, but I got back out. So, that's really what that is.
And apart from obviously your wife, who's been a massive help.
Yeah, she has.
What forms of counselling and what other things seem to help?
Well, I had counselling because it was getting really bad. It was starting to affect work and stuff like that. So it was starting to affect home life a little bit as well. So I had counselling, which helped a lot. And I had one form of counselling. And then that helped. That helped a lot. I don't really talk about. I mean, I said I'd come on and do it, didn't I?
Yeah.
I dreaded it again. Dreaded the first one. Dreaded this one.
We're not that bad.
No. But I was dreading this one because it's so. I suppose close to the heart's the wrong word, but it's so traumatic to relive every step of it again, and and obviously I see it differently than I did as a 15-year-old lad because I now see you value life more, don't you? When you get older, you hold on to life more than I would have then. And obviously, being a father now, your emotions change. Everything changes. The emotions change. You're a different person, aren't you? As you get older into your 30s and 40s, you become a different person completely. So yeah, when I was watching that footage today, it was quite hard to watch because you almost feel as you were feeling at the time. Again.
It must be very hard to watch. And I say for something that was so many years ago, and I'm rewatching it. It's just going to bring that back up. But on the same note, no doubt that helps you deal with it better by talking about it.
Yeah. And again, I've dealt with things that have been not as traumatic, but nearly as traumatic since better, probably because I experienced that. I mean, we all know that we need to be. I mean, I come from that generation that we all come from, where you don't talk about your feelings. I was always surrounded by hard men, I suppose, and the main thing that linked them all together is they never spoke about their feelings or how they felt about something, and I took that on as being, I suppose if you talked about something, it was like a point of weakness, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we'll either talk.
That's what we're trying to change, though, here, Pat, and that's why you're here. That's what you're trying to change. That's what we're trying to change.
I mean, we either talk about it to learn from our lessons from the past, and you're learning from what happened that day and how that should never ever happen again, or you're talking about it for yourself, where you're trying to mend, aren't you, and forget about what happened and move on. So, I think I have moved on. I think I don't think about it all the time anymore. I mean, it still upsets me a little bit when I see it, and the footage and stuff. It still sort of takes me back there a little bit, but not so much now.
Yeah, well, I think that's going to happen, isn't it? That's definitely going to see footage of it, and I mean, even me watching it, I was in disbelief, and I really, before speaking to you and watching that footage, I didn't have a clue really. I said to you, then I presume the whole stadium had got filled with people, and there were, but it was a small part of the stadium where the issues were.
Yeah.
So I didn't have but even me, it was upsetting me watching it, because you can see it happening, can't you?
Yeah.
And again, in hindsight, we can see it happening. We can look at the CCTV and see what's going on and where. To be there in it, you must have just been clueless to what was really going on. Why is this still happening? You don't know, do you?
No,
you don't know until you look back.
No, I mean, it was good. I think it was a good. Oh God, it's got to be a good 15, 20 minutes. I mean, I'm just presuming now because it's so long ago. Before you realise what was happening, and it was really serious. I mean, because there was some bodies coming out of there, and you can only sort of register how serious something is from somebody. Okay, the police and how they're reacting. So when you're seeing police officers trying to revive several people at one time, it's got to be bad, isn't it? So, and when you come home and my mum's there and she doesn't know really what's gone on because she can only see it on the news. You can imagine what she's thinking because
you can't, can you?
I'm thinking, did we have mobile phones then? I don't think my dad had one.
No, not back
No,
then.
no. So she was waiting probably.
Hoping you were coming home.
Well, North Wales to Sheffield's got to be.
It's a good drive.
It's got to be a fair 4-hour drive or something, 3-hour drive. So she was waiting now on from the time it started, probably 6 or 7 hours to know that nothing had happened to us.
Yeah. And how many poor other buggers were waiting that time and then they didn't come home. But like, your mum thinking, I just hope to God my family comes home to me.
Yeah.
And that's traumatic in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
We don't always see that side of it, do we?
No.
When you're in the fight, you don't think about your loved ones who are watching you.
No.
You know what I mean? Because you're just surviving, but for your poor mum sat there thinking, I want my family to come home.
Yeah, it must have been bad for her. I mean, I remember her standing at the door as we came in, through in the car because we had quite a big driveway and she was stood there at the door. So she was obviously waiting and watching the news because they had that help. I just didn't remember the helpline being on the news for all day and all night probably. And obviously, I mean, when you talk about Hillsborough now, you're talking to a generation that probably weren't even born when it happened. So they probably wouldn't, I'm not being insulting, but they probably wouldn't really understand the how bad that was.
Well, say, Pat, I didn't until I watched that footage. I didn't fully understand what was going on. And I was born at that point. I was very young, but I'd have been 84, so just after one. Oh, it would have been, 89, wasn't it? Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But it's just something you know the name of.
I knew the name.
And you know something's happened, the big push.
Yeah.
But it's, like with anything, it's like with any history, it's great to have someone there to actually walk you through how they felt. Because otherwise it's just an after-school special, isn't it? But you've got to realise that affected so many families. And
it can be just numbers on a screen, can't it, when you're not relating to an experience.
Yeah.
Although it's a lot of numbers, 96, it is just a number. But actually, that 96, that's 96 people. That's 96 families affected. You were saying there was
the two girls.
Two girls, wasn't there?
Sarah Hicks and I can't remember the other girl's name. Apologise for that. So he lost his two daughters at Hillsborough.
Yeah, just.
I mean, that's your future generation gone, isn't it? In one game, you know. I mean, my mum lives up in Yorkshire, and I don't know how it happened, but she started talking to Andy Burnham, the MP.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now Andy Burnham, he led the charge for the inquest
Right.
on behalf of the Liverpool fans. So he spoke to her in some great length about what she knew about Hillsborough, because he didn't know a lot of it from a spectator's point of view. So she spoke to him about that, and he was quite interested to hear the story, obviously, that my dad would have told my mum at the time. So that was quite interesting, and that's sort of 20 odd years later, because that's only happened, I think, over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So for him to get an account from a child's point of view or from an adult's point of view at that time, obviously aided his march to try and get some sort of, I suppose, justice for them, I suppose is the word I should use. So.
Well, Pat, unless there's anything else you want to say about it, I'll advertise the next couple of shows.
No, I'll just say thanks, my wife Kim, and my kids as well, really supporting me through it all. Because you can't get it through. You can't really get through something like that without their help as well.
Family. And family hasn't just got to be blood. Family is those who you choose to have in your life. Well, me and Lee were up here earlier today because, as we know, we're all going into lockdown on Thursday. So me and Lee interviewed Bally Baines from Papyrus. Papyrus is it's a suicide line for youths, I think up to
35, yeah.
But that will begin released on Thursday. So please watch it. Because Papyrus do so many wonderful things, different apps that people can get onto, hotlines, text messages. It's a brilliant little organisation. And then on Tuesday, we are going to be going at slightly later times from next week. We're going to be going at 7:30 because obviously we're all going to be in different homes and whatever. And we're going to be joined by Sky Stewart, who is going to be coming on talking about her life and her journey. So before we leave, Pat, have you got any sayings or things that have got you through life?
Just take every day as it comes, make the most of each day, your opportunities, and just grab life like they can't now. So, and then just remember that your life can be over in a split second like that, and just grab every opportunity you can. Enjoy life.
So until we see each other next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Ta-ra a bit.
Listen.
And that's a wrap for another show. But if there are any comments or messages that you would like us to read out for our next podcast, please be in touch. There are also lots of different organisations at the bottom of this page, and hopefully they can help you or someone you care about. Please share this to spread the word. Until we talk next time, ta-ra a bit.
Listen.